Hello and welcome back to the latest season of the Publisher podcast from Media Voices. I'm Esther Thorpe.
And I'm Peter Houston.
Oh, you got us both! And welcome to the first pod of our spring season 2026.
We're actually back.
We're back.
Together. Same time.
Can we just start by saying AI is banned for like at least a couple of weeks?
Yeah. Well, it's huge and it's important, but man, it's been a lot. But a full season on one topic, I'm not sure we'll ever maybe do that again. Well, never say never.
Yeah.
But, wow.
Well, I think it's the fact we had the run-up to the event as well, so like the latter half of last year we were thinking about it, and then we were running the masterclasses alongside, and there's been some amazing stories, but I also just don't.
So, okay, so my big takeaway from that whole season, other than AI is taking over the world, is that it's a culture thing, it's not a tech thing. You know, there's a tagline on all the bins and posters and bus stops in Glasgow. It says, people make Glasgow. Well, people make publishing. And I think that's the takeaway for that.
Unless you're Pink News, in which case apparently you can go for a newsroom that is not reporter-led.
What?
So Pink News have basically said that they are no longer a reporter-led newsroom and went and did loads of layoffs last month.
So what... Yeah, you're going to have to unpack that one. What is that? Who's leading the newsroom? So they're doing a full-on BuzzFeed?
Well, yeah. And that's not gone down very well either.
we're kind of seeing how that's going.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't see that. Oof.
Anyway, yes, so we are having a thoroughly non-AI episode this week. Today we are talking to Amanda Barnes, who is CEO of Faversham House, which for those of you who don't know is a UK B2B publisher which operates mainly in utilities and sustainability. We don't often talk to B2B people, do we? No. Like it's an area we woefully neglect.
Which is kind of weird because I've spent, I don't know, most of my 40-year publishing career in B2B. I mean, you know, Media Voices is a B2B brand. I didn't actually know Faversham House, which is on me, not Faversham House. I think we should talk more about B2B. I really do, because I think there's a lot of stuff going on and there's a lot of interesting stories. Listening to your interview with Amanda, and this idea that she led the management buyout of the company, which is always interesting, right? Every publishing company where there's a management buyout, there's a brilliant story.
Yeah.
So she led that in 2010. She's just driven this massive transformation program to modernise things, which has involved moving to subscription models, which is perfect for B2B, right?
I mean, now it makes a lot of sense, but I think back in 2010 that was still considered quite radical.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, now it's a pivot to subscriptions and pivot to paid content and pivot to membership and whatever. But yeah, I guess in 2010 it was a big deal.
I definitely want to speak to more B2B publishers generally. I know I've said we're not going to talk about any more about AI. But
Maybe we need a code word, safe word.
What shall not be named. I think a lot of B2B publications are actually quite resilient to a lot of what's going on, because whereas people might be happy to, look up makeup or tech reviews and get an answer from an AI overview, when it is your business and it is your job and you need to be looking up, I don't know, like sewage flows or electricity generation data, you're not going to trust ChatGPT with that. You're going to want to go to trusted publications and trusted brands like Faversham House. So I think there's a lot of resilience there.
Yeah, I think it's that mission critical thing. The shift to digital, I think B2B was better at that, quicker, went deeper because of that, because getting regular information to people digitally is obviously a really big deal. You can talk about data rather than just feature stories and all the rest of it. But also the idea that B2B is niche by definition. It's just for instance sewage, right? Not necessarily sexually, but my God, it's important. and that idea of it being important and helping you do a better job, helping you save money, make money, whatever it is, that's ideal for subs and for events and for data services. The best B2B publishers I ever worked with didn't think of themselves as publishers. They thought of themselves as part of the industry that they were covering. Yeah, they had to obviously worry about all the publishing stuff that we talk about, but their primary focus was on what's best practice in sewage management rather than what's best practice in subscriptions management.
Sure, I'm not sure. I think I might prefer AI chat to sewage management chat, honestly.
Okay, well, let's pick a different industry.
But I think there's an interesting thing here that B2B mindset is not something that is exclusive to B2B publishers, because we're seeing some news publishers that have had success now. You look at Bloomberg and what they've done.
Yeah.
New York Times has even got some of that sort of that intelligence aspect. This isn't something that is only something B2B publishers can do. There's news publishers and lifestyle publishers and B2C publishers that can have that kind of mindset of what information is critical, what information is needed, rather than just this sort of, journalism is nice to have as a big mission statement.
Yeah, and I think that idea of enterprise subscriptions, the FT really leaned into this. So you're selling subscriptions to companies, not to individuals. Washington Post, apparently, one of the... I'm desperately trying not to go off on a Washington Post rant. I'm desperately trying not to get on some kind of blacklist from the Washington Post, because I feel so sorry for the people that work there, other than the person that owns it, because he's a dickhead. There's a piece in Editor and Publisher by a gentleman called Imtiaz Patel, who used to be at Garnet. He's been at Baltimore Banner. And it's the most positive Washington Post story I've seen in a long time. And what he's saying is that, direct quote, people and organisations will pay for information that helps them make better decisions, manage their risks, and identify opportunities. And what he's basically saying is that the Washington Post, now that it's been gutted and can't cover books and sport and whatever else Mr. Bezos has set fire to, should be leaning into this kind of business critical, policy critical information. And he's got a point. I think he's definitely got a point. It's a good piece, actually.
Yeah, I think he argued that they're really well positioned to almost be like the intelligence service for Washington.
Yeah.
The access they've got and everything else. I mean, I think he was arguing this is more how they could do it rather than how they are doing it, because I'm not necessarily sure the top-down incentive to do this is there. But
seen as Mr. Bezos has got an inside track to the warmongering chief, yes, probably very well placed to get that kind of business going.
Anyway, Amanda is speaking at Monetizing B2B Information and Events in London on the 13th of May. So if you have any skin in the B2B game, that is an event you need to be at. All the info for that and our other events, things like the newsletter awards, the podcast awards, at voices.media/events. We actually have a nice, cohesive events page now.
We're putting this out in April. All the tickets might be sold by then.
If there are any tickets left, there's more info about how to get those at voices.media/events. It has sold out pretty early in the past, so by the time this goes out, there might not be any left. In which case, this will just be your only taster of it. Yeah.
Come on, let's get to this interview.
Okay. So I started by asking Amanda how she'd describe Faversham House to those who aren't familiar with it.
So we're an independent publisher and event organiser, so a media company. We're across all sorts of platforms. We only do digital, and we do in-person and online events. We cover two main sectors, sustainability and utilities. And when I talk about utilities, I mean the business of running a utility company. It's all B2B, so we cover gas, water, electricity. On the sustainability side, we're going to the sustainability professionals who are trying to make their companies more sustainable and reach net zero. So that's us in a nutshell.
Very sexy topics.
Well, it is sexy, but when you're talking about sewage an awful lot, or how energy flows through the wires, it's all very technical and very precise. So yeah, it's like most specialist media. We know our markets really well, and they know us. And what we try and do is obviously deliver for our audiences, whether they are our readers or our visitors or the commercial partners that we deal with.
And you were quite influential in reshaping and modernising the business from 2010. Could you talk through some of the changes which needed to be made to turn Faversham House from sort of a traditional B2B publishing company to what I say is a more modern digital-first media organisation?
I suppose that with business to business, we have gone through many shocks. There was the internet, the death of classified, a certain regard, the death of print, though I think print also has its place now. I think it's re-establishing itself, but not for us. I think the things that changed were mainly cultural. So, when you do a print product, you have a certain rhythm. We had a weekly, it was going to be published every Friday, etc. And so that rhythm is very precise. When you switch to digital, it's a big mindset for the journalists. So that was a big part of it. So how do you go from being a print first to a digital first organisation? And it took us some while, and I think it wasn't really until COVID hit that we fully had transitioned to digital. And after COVID, we stopped all our print. It wasn't actually a big moment because the journalists were already invested. We went with one team doing everything rather than separate teams. So that was a big cultural shift. The other one, I think, was not relying on advertising. And in fact, advertising hadn't really been our bread and butter, on the page advertising, for a long time. So we do what it's called now marketing services. So we partner with organisations to deliver a marketing plan over the whole year. And that was a big thing. And then I think the next big shift was making the events part of the brands. So we started off, we did conferences for the first time really in about 2010. And we had that as a separate unit because often we'd use our editorial team for doing the production side. And they were interested in the next big idea, not necessarily the next commercial idea. And,
that doesn't sound like editorial at all.
No, they knew what their readers wanted. It's not necessarily what the commercial guys would pay for, or even what their readers would pay for. So, we started off as separate units, and then by probably about 2015, 2016, we brought them together. And so we now have what we call a brand ecosystem. So that means that the brands are really invested in their events and they're really invested in their content. And it's just a subtle change which has happened over time as we developed. And I think the next big shift was to subscriptions. And so that was a really big shift in about 2015. So by the time the pandemic hit, we were already quite established as a subscription publication on the utilities side, and it was a very hard paywall. So commercial content would sit outside of the paywall, and then anything of value was within the paywall. So that was another big change. So I think it's those three shifts, from print to digital, from integrating everything into a brand and an ecosystem, and then finally the membership part, which now means we do have an ecosystem. So we deliver whatever anybody wants in any format they want, I suppose. And everything feeds the other. And we also, I think the other biggest change was we became one team. So during COVID, we had you have an everyone email. In COVID, we called it, was it Renaissance or something like that? It was just, let's get through this and let's come out the other side. And then afterwards, we realized that what we were trying to do is be one team. And so that's the ethos we use, one team for everything.
You've got the two quite different sides of the business. You've got the utilities, which I can imagine, if you're a professional in that area, you very much need that information. Like that's a sort of a imperative to subscribe. Is that different on the sustainability side, or are you very much targeting again people who might need the information there?
Yes, it is different, interestingly. So you're right. The utilities, we found they need the information, even though a lot of it you can read in the FT or the Economist. We try and break it first, of course. But what we do is we give them that deep dive, and we also tell them what everybody else is doing and what it will mean. So very regulation driven. On the sustainability side, there is regulation and in that too. And we followed the same model because it had worked on Utility Week. So in fact, the membership on ED is much newer. It's much younger. But we realised after a year of doing that actually it wasn't really resonating. And it wasn't the information they wanted. They want the peer-to-peer community. And so really we were offering that anyway. We just we just changed our marketing, and that's worked really well. So a lot of sustainability professionals work in isolation and often feel very lonely and feel they're very committed and passionate about what they do, and they need other people to keep themselves going a lot of the time. But, and then it depends on the size of the company, because you have very big companies who are very sophisticated and want more in-depth information. So we cover both.
Yeah, because I suppose even bigger companies are likely to only have one person in charge of sustainability.
They might do, but I think more and more sustainability is becoming embedded, a bit like health and safety in everything everybody does. So there's an evolution going on.
Yeah. On the sustainability topic, there's been some, I'm going to call it rhetoric from overseas recently, which has kind of meant that companies have been kind of quietly slipping it down their agenda. Have you found that that's something you're seeing the impact of, or are you still finding that actually the people in the organisations are still pushing for that? I mean, or is there a geographical difference?
I think that we always came at it, and we launched Edie as a digital-only platform back in 1998, and so it was a long, long time ago. And when we did that, we did it because we thought that business could become more profitable by following a good route. Because at that time it was about saving money on energy. In fact, it's probably still about saving money on energy, actually. And I think what we have found is that those people who are truly committed to it are still truly committed to it, and it's embedded in their organisation, and they are using it to drive competitive advantage, whether that's by saving money or by positioning themselves in the right way. And so as an entity in itself, that hasn't changed. Those who are committed, and that includes some of the biggest companies in the world, how they position themselves externally may have changed. They may not be talking about that, but they may be talking about resilience now, not ESG. Because, like it or not, climate change is here. And if you're a food manufacturer and your supply chain includes fields which become flooded all the time, you have to have a resilient supply chain. So that is one shift. And then the other thing is those companies who jumped on the bandwagon and whose CEOs rashly said, oh yes, we'll be, reach net zero by 2030 or 2035. And all their sustainability teams were going, oh, stand back on this. That's not going to be possible. We have now realised it's not going to be possible. And those people are rowing back. So that is happening. I think that we tend to cater for the more serious companies, and we do take a very practical, this is what you have to do, this is what you can save by doing it, this is how you can develop competitive advantage or resilience. So the froth has gone, the core hasn't.
And I think one of the things I love about Faversham House is that you very much put your money where your mouth is with sustainability. So can you talk through some of your own sustainability approaches?
Yeah, and it's interesting because the more you do it, the more you realise what your customers are going through. We're, a medium-sized company. We're not huge. So, we became a B Corp. It was another of my bright ideas in the middle of COVID. I think it's because I was shopping at Cook so much, and they've been a B Corp for a while. I thought, what's this B Corp stuff? Of course, all my sustainability team knew about it well in advance. So I started reading up, and I thought, that's really us. And I wanted some way to demonstrate that we can walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And so we start on this, and I read all the criteria, and I thought, this is going to be really easy. I can tick all of these boxes. My God, I didn't realise. And in the middle of the pandemic, it was probably not the best place to start. But, we started, and it did take us a while. And actually, what I really liked is it wasn't a box ticking. It's a fundamental change in how you organise yourself and your approach. And, we've taken it on with a vengeance, and we're just working through our next certification is in 2027. Being really competitive, we wanted to get the maximum number of points we possibly could. So you needed 80 to qualify. We got 103.6, I think it was.
Wow.
Which was really good. But of course, I realised after we'd done that, you have to improve every year. No, what next? I should have been much more content to go low and then carry on. However, that's not in our nature. We're ambitious. That's one of our values. And so, luckily or unluckily, B Corp have changed how they're doing the next set of certifications. So in 2027, what we have to do is hit a threshold in each of the pillars that they've chosen. So we're busy working towards that, and we just do it all the time. It has to become a way of life. So it's not just given to certain people. Everyone in the organisation has a goal. If they have a bonus, 10% of their bonus, including the boards, is related to meeting those sustainability goals that they set out to do.
On a day-to-day level, what sort of thing does that involve for people?
So on the content side, with the conference producers and with the editorial teams, they have to work towards an equality of voice, we call it. So we don't really look at it in terms of race or gender anymore. We look at lots of different measures to see that we get fresh voices who are heard in our editorial. In utilities, the battle sometimes is to get female voices heard, trying to get younger voices heard, because it's quite a mature industry in lots of ways. On the sustainability side, it's definitely trying to get different ethnicities represented. There's a lot of females, so there's never a problem with that. So we set ourselves those goals, and the editorial team have to have those in mind and are judged by it. And then on the event side, we campaign really, really strongly for better use of resources. And we push the venues a lot on that, and they are responding really well. We're part of a fantastic initiative that Informa started, I think, called Better Stands, and we rate all the stands in our exhibition. And in the exhibitions, the other thing we did as a result of COVID and sustainability was that we build stands for our exhibitors. We discourage them, both financially and in other ways, from building their own stands. When they do, though, we work very closely with their contractors, because some people do want to reuse their stands. So lots of little things all the time that we're doing.
And you've touched on COVID a few times as a time of quite a big change. Obviously, the events must have stopped. How has there been a change in the way that they've come back? Because I know there used to be, I think it was like the figure I read was 65% of revenue pre-COVID. Is that shifted now in terms of sort of how big a priority it is, how it's integrated, how you approach them?
COVID was a huge shock, and actually it was a bit like having an electric shock to your business in so many ways. I won't repeat because everybody had the same sort of challenges. However, for us, it made us much braver and bolder. So we gave ourselves permission to stop doing stuff that we didn't need to do, and we were always thinking, well, we're not sure our audience would like this, and we just went ahead and did it because we had to survive. And I think coming out of it, events, we sat on people's money for 3 years. We were just about to go up to the NEC in April and May for 2 big exhibitions. And it's not a very comfortable feeling, sitting there thinking if everyone asks for your money back, you'll be bankrupt. So we had luckily very good relationships with our exhibitors, and where our exhibitors were suffering, we gave them money back. But most of them just said, yeah, we'll go with it. And then in the end, we stopped reissuing the contracts because we had to change it so many times. So the last exhibitions we had done were in 2019, and the next ones were in 3 years later in 2022. So in a rambly sort of way, I was saying that, yeah, it was a huge shock to the system, but events are incredibly important to us. One, they drive a lot of revenue and a lot of cash flow, which is also really nice. But I think what they are now, looking at them, is they're important in terms of what's happening with AI. So for us, they are the physical embodiment of our communities and our networks. And they're a really vital stop on the journey. They're really fully integrated into our member journey. So all our members get special treatment at our events. All of them are given content before, during and after. And that goes with our commercial sponsors. They work with us throughout the year. And I think the other thing it does for us is we collect huge amounts of data. We know, and I should have probably mentioned this before, but we work very hard on a single customer view, as has everyone. So tech is an enormous part of what we do. And now we track what our readers read, what they say about themselves. We're using AI to understand them better. We know what they go and look at an exhibition. We know whether they turn left or right as they come into the show. All of these sorts of things which build up a bigger picture of who we're talking to and what they need. And that's obviously very commercially valuable. But that's first-party data that nobody else has because it's unique to our ecosystem. And that, I think, is where we will differentiate ourselves in the years to come.
Yes, I suppose until we send our robots to events, everybody's got to go in person, right?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of talk that, events beloved of the P world because people have to turn up. Well, you do have to wonder how many people are going to be left to turn up to events at some point. I don't think events are completely immune from the march of AI. I just think they are another part of that jigsaw that makes it so important for modern day publishers, modern day media companies.
Yeah. There was quite a lot of talk at the AI forum in November about AI potentially replacing that buyer-seller relationship. So exhibitions kind of cultivate if you want to buy and you want to sell, we'll bring you together. But if AI could bypass that, do you think there's a risk of that? Or do you think actually what you're offering with the data and saying, this is what people are interested in, this is where they're going, this is how that interaction went, do you think that strengthens it from just salespeople typing into ChatGPT, get me a list of my top 10 prospects or something?
I think what COVID did teach us is that people need human interaction. And people go to exhibitions. I mean, we all spend loads and loads of time and money researching why people go or why they don't go. And it usually comes down to the same things. They want to see other people. They want to explore what's out there, what's new, and they want to connect with buyers and sellers. And I don't think that changes. I think what you have is an audience who goes to an exhibition often with more precise knowledge of what's going on in the world, buyers and sellers in that sense. I think that tailored experiences are becoming more important. I think, the experiential view of going to an exhibition isn't, you've got to spend more on making your events pleasant and interesting places for people to go. And I think that serendipity is always there. I went to Confex recently, which is really the industry's own exhibition. And it was great. I wandered around and I saw lots of people I knew and lots of networking, lots of events. I went to some really good sessions. And then I bumped into a few suppliers and went to look at exhibition stands and thought, I'd never thought of that. That's really good. And took the contacts back. So I think there is a place for that serendipity.
What about festivalisation? Are you getting Snoop Dogg on stage anytime soon?
No, I think that might probably blow the minds of some of our utility clients. I do think there are people who are doing it really well. I think Legal Tech Talk does it really well. I think people want to enjoy their experiences. They do not want to feel it's a great hassle. We have done the exhibition industry has done quite a lot of research on saying when you go to a big event, the organizer controls a very small part of those interactions and you have to rely on everybody else. So we are doing our best to make both the exhibitor and the visitor journey as smooth as possible and as enjoyable. So this year, we are spending a lot more on the show. Our Utility Week Live happens in May, and we are spending a lot more on how it looks, how it feels, what's on offer food-wise, the choices. We've always been really good at producing fantastic content that normally we would charge for and is given away free. But a lot of it, there's a lot of emphasis now making the experience really fun. Otherwise, people won't come.
There's an article about Bloomberg Live this week, and I think their new head of events has come in, and it's just said basically fun is out. If you couldn't picture their CEO doing it, they're not doing it. So morning yoga is off the table because they're like, the CEO wouldn't do it. So,
I do it. I love morning.
Well, I thought that's somebody who's thought the male perspective right there. Like, I do morning yoga.
I think it depends on your audience. It comes back to what does the audience want, and I just think we haven't to be so fuddy-duddy about it. I'm not sure I'd go for DJs because maybe as I get older, the noise just does my head in, background noise. But, I think that you have to understand your audience. For ED, we're doing walking meetups from the station to the event because people want to talk to each other. It's very different. It's very different from the engineers and the chief execs who come to Utility Week live. They do want something slightly different, but they still want to enjoy themselves. They still want to be able to have a reasonably priced sandwich, which they can eat and, edible and nice. So they still want to be able to fill up their water bottles. And they still like having a good visual environment. So I think festivalisation, you do it in the way which suits your audience.
Do you have a rough idea of what the split is between like events, membership and other revenue across the business?
So I think membership's about 12%. And growing, but the events grow faster because they're just bigger numbers. And the events are about 65%. But, what's an event? There's a lot of things we do which are round tables, very intimate events for maybe a dozen people. So a lot of it's tailor-made for our commercial partners. When you have a big exhibition at the NEC, it's a big amount of turnover. It's a big part of your business. But it's not, every bit is important. So that ecosystem idea is really key for us. And so everything in the end comes back to those members, that audience, even if they're not the biggest part of our revenue. It's satisfying them, which allows us to play in all these other, in other fields.
You mentioned data earlier on. Are there any other things you're doing across particularly sort of the utilities and sustainability portfolios in terms of data products for people? I sort of heard B2B brands talk about quite a lot in that they have access to all this data that really enhances the membership propositions. I think ED did an acquisition in this space.
Yeah, we bought Springwise, which was a database of early stage innovation, Series A, Series B and C funding. And we have tried doing that. We used a lot of AI. We worked with Merit, who were really good and are great partners, creating an ability to collect all this data in an automated fashion, which meant that we went from 15 innovations a week to 150. It's been quite transformational. And we've pulled all this data together, we've cleaned it, systemized it, we've used some AI to write summaries, it's all checked by humans, etc. And we have packaged it up and tried to sell it as a data product and failed miserably. C'est la vie. It's been a costly exercise. Luckily, it was my costly exercise with no one in the team, so I can only hold my hands up on that. But what we have realised is that perhaps we got the product slightly wrong and the market slightly wrong on that. So, we've got this fantastic asset and we're pivoting. We're going to use it in a different way. And I think actually now we know what the product is, and that's another big one of my learnings. I perhaps didn't really understand it as well as I should have done. I tell you, CEOs make just as many mistakes as everybody else. But it's a fabulous product. The people who work on it are absolutely excellent. And I think that we have now thought, now this is where it fits into our product mix. And that data now, we've just done an exercise using Claude AI, which I think is one of the best out there, to review the thousands and thousands of innovations we've got in our new database, the Airtable they're all held in, and come up with some trends and patterns, which is always sort of what was at the back of my mind. And those trends and patterns are fairly mind-blowing, actually. And they're going to not only be determining some of the ideas that we're going to explore in terms of events and product, but they're quite valuable to other people in our ecosystem. And so that's the next stage. So I think my slightly naive view of it has changed, which is good because we're a small company. We can do what we like. We can say, no, that didn't work, let's try something else. Yeah. So, the fail fast bit. So I think the data, and having said that, then if we add that to what we know that our audiences are looking for in terms of solutions, that becomes quite powerful.
Yeah.
So monetizing that in a different way is now where I'm at.
Yeah, so it's if you've got the package, just sometimes like repackaging it in a way that people want.
Yeah, we've got that's it. We didn't we haven't done what they wanted. We know they wanted that information. We just hadn't got the package right. So, you've got to just tear it all up and start again.
I love hearing about honest mistakes on the podcast as well. It's not very often we get them.
Honestly, I've been in this game an awfully long time and I've got a very long list of them. And my kids always say, "Oh, Mum, be humble." And I think, oh, God. Sometimes just let me get on, succeed. But we do more often than we fail. So,
well, it's easier to talk about the successes, but I think we learn more from the failures, is what the LinkedIn bros tell me. There's a little section on your website about international. Is that something new that's coming? And care to talk us through international expansion plans?
Yeah, we do actually. I think, we're in quite defined markets. Interestingly, ED is international. It has a very strong overseas audience. And I think that we can replicate what we do in other geographies. So we are. And I think that's both on the membership and on the event side. So we've had a really nice conference that we developed and has grown in Canada, and we're moving that to another geography. We're moving that to Australia this year. That's a good old geo adaptation. And we have moved one of our, we launched last year something called European Drinking Water Quality, very niche. And I think it's those little niche communities that we're building up. So I think, that's sort of where we're going next.
Yeah,
I think, and looking at acquisitions, there's still lots out there I'd like to buy, probably with a bit more due diligence.
Is that something that you need on the ground? So I'm thinking if you're doing the European water quality stuff, is that something you need people on the ground in Europe, or can you be quite adaptable with freelancers these days?
Yeah, I think we are very adaptable. I'm obsessed with revenue per FTE and with profit, mainly because revenue is glorious, but profit is much more satisfying. And also, after COVID, I felt cash in the bank is really, really where I'm at. And so I think we do a mixture. I think when you're launching something, you really want to put your best people on it because there's always risk. So running a business is about assessing risk continually, and you can cut down risk if you've got a new market you don't know geographically or indeed in product terms. What you want to take away is the risk, the people risk. So you put your best people on it. So you can tick. It's not the people. So I think we do a mixture. So we outsource our ops on our big exhibition, for instance. Our team control all of that. So we do the same model. So it's all about understanding what you're doing next and minimizing your risks, I think. And, Europe is fairly straightforward to do, but you still got to look out. So I'll give you a good example. When we first went to Canada, we did everything in the way we'd done it in the UK. And what we didn't realise is they all like to sit down for lunch. They didn't like poser tables. And, they want part of the whole experience was sitting down to lunch on bigger tables. So we've adapted. And then some of the things we do over here that aren't done on continental Europe actually have worked really well. So people go, oh, this is different. We like this. So it's a bit of feeling your way, especially when you're a small company and you've not got the expertise.
Just for the record, I hate standing at a little table for lunch. Just like if you've got two hands with food and drink, like where do you put it?
I'm always dropping everything. So yeah, I agree.
You've mentioned already a couple of things you're doing in terms of AI. How are you feeling about that generally? Are there any areas you think are particularly showing promise for B2B?
I think the idea is AI an enabler or is it a disabler? So, you've got lots of things going on at the same time and it's so fast. I first talked about this with my soon-to-be son-in-law back in 2021-22, and he showed me ChatGPT and it blew my mind. So I came back and talked to Carl, our CTO, and was like, how have you looked at this thing here? But we were already using machine learning. Lots of it is stuff we were already using in some ways, integrated into packages. It's that interface which has got better. So we had a conference for all our journalists and talked about AI and what it meant and what should the guardrails be, and from the most junior to the most senior. And we got them to think through how it was going to affect them. think outside the day-to-day. I've got to get my story out by 10 o'clock or whatever. And it was really interesting. So we're trying to take everyone on that journey, as they call it. And I think the jury's still out. There is definitely stuff we can do better, faster and more cheaply with AI. There are definitely products we can develop because we're able to crunch all that data more quickly. There is an environmental cost.
I was just about to ask, because obviously you've got the sustainability imperative as well, and AI is like not sustainably.
No, and there's talking about data centers and how that power and energy is going to be, and water is going to be used is a big part of what the utilities are thinking about at the moment. So, yeah, I don't think you obviously can't ignore it. And I think that we will find there are things where it's better and useful and others where, one of our senior marketing directors did 2 days of AI immersion on various courses and things and came back and said, I'm not sure it's going to save us any time or money. It'll just enable us to do more stuff. But we've got to be very careful what that stuff is so that we're not just going round in circles. So, yeah, I'm excited about the changes and the opportunities. And I'm also a little wary.
A big thanks to Amanda for joining us on the podcast. And if you want the key learnings from this in writing, you can head to voices.media or make sure you're signed up to our newsletter to get it straight to your inbox every Tuesday.
So, I'm inspired. I think Media Voice's mission in this B2B context, it really is all this stuff. It's events, we've got the newsletter going on, we've got our awards, we've got our summits. I wouldn't say I'm feeling smug or anything, but we're ticking the boxes in the B2B framework, right?
Just need a membership now, right?
Yeah. Talking to summits, the early bird rates for our summits are ending soon. All the links for all the stuff, so whether it's newsletters, whether it's the actual podcasts, whether it's our awards, all of that, you can find it on voices.media/events.
And next week's guest is Ben Smith from Semaphore. I'm really excited to put this conversation out.
Interesting.
Yes. We're going to be chatting about how the publication has changed since launch and standing out in an age of... I can't do it again. I'm talking about AI again. And standing out in an age of AI slop and news avoidance.
That'll be a good one. Looking forward to that one. Until then, keep up with all things Media Voices by following us on LinkedIn and subscribing to the publisher newsletter. You know where, over on voices.media.
Until next week, goodbye.
Bye.